Hey there, guys. This is Robert Ice, aka Roofman Rob, owner and CEO, chief visionary of Custom Construction Solutions, one of the entrepreneurs out here in New Mexico changing the roofing and solar industry. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mike Szczesniak. I'm the CEO and head coach at The Results Engine. We're a high performance coaching consulting company. Basically, we help sales pros make more money, not from a sales training perspective, meaning like what to say, but more from a high performance perspective, how to structure our calendars, how to elevate how we're showing up as humans. And we've been serving the door-to-door space in particular since late 2019, worked with hundreds of reps across, I think, 10 or 11 different industries. And it's been a lot of fun.
Man, that is awesome. What a blessing to have you here today with us, Mike. Thank you for bringing all of that value. Thank you for all the value you've added to the roofing and solar industry and all the great coaching you're doing out there. We truly appreciate it. With that being said, we'll hop right into things. If you don't mind, Mike, the first question I got for you is, what do next level results mean to you, and how does it relate to the financial growth in both personal and business contexts?
Dude, I love this question for many reasons. The first thing is like, I think success in general is kind of interesting, right? You kind of have to put it in air quotes. It's unique to the individual. And we can look at all the stereotypical examples. Like everyone wants to have a 7-figure business. Everyone wants the cars, the watches, whatever it is, all this stuff that like social media told us to want. But I think this is where a lot of people miss the mark. And what I mean by that is like their goals are not their goals. And I think the more dialed in you can get with what you actually want, the more you can stay in alignment and the easier it's going to be for you to persist long term, right? Not just go knock 1,000,000 doors today, but like how do you actually execute consistently over the long term, which is what true high performance is. For me, I know what those dollar amounts are for me, but like ultimately, dude, success for me is just happiness. Like I know what I want my family life to look like. I know how much money I'm going to need to make to afford all of that so that we don't have to stress. I know what I want with respect to time and, like quality time with the people that I truly care about. And I think the more people can get dialed in with that, the better off they're going to be, right? Life is a marathon, not a sprint. And even if you can generate a ton of success early on, which as we've seen, like you can do in the door-to-door industry, what separates the people that can allow that to continue and continue to replicate that success from the people that, maybe make, $500,000 in a year and then they don't even go work for the next 6 months. They don't really do anything. They squander all the money. It comes down to how dialed they are and how aligned they are with everything. And I think that applies to business and personal life. For me, it's all like one kind of well-oiled machine. That's like true high performance in my opinion. But yeah, I think the alignment is the most important piece.
I concur to that. I definitely see that too. And, I consistently tell everybody, definitely got to have that target that you're razor focused on. You got to have that target in front of you consistently to make sure that you're working towards that goal. But even more, just having that dialed in. And I think also a key point to that, Mike, is, making sure that you can some way create your lifestyle to intertwine with business. I mean, that's one of the key points I've kind of done to elevate myself is, I mix my lifestyle into business. So every point of my lifestyle is essentially work, and I have fun doing it. I've found a way to mix family life with business, and that way everything, we're always closing and always working towards the goal, but still living that life that we want and having that, time freedom and that financial freedom to live and focus on those lifestyle goals that we're all working so hard for. I totally concur with that. Thank you for sharing. Mike, could you share some specific strategies that you've employed to set ambitious financial goals and consistently work towards surpassing them?
Yeah. So I think first of all, we got to piggyback off of the first question, right? Like what's actually the target? And I think, again, this is one of the common missteps that everybody has. They think they need to be striving for specific targets because social media told them to. their manager told them to, their parents told them to. But if the numbers don't matter, then you will just continually be like grinding your gears, whether that's a number of deals, right? I want to hit golden door. I want to do 130 installs in the solar industry, or whatever the numbers become moving forward, or whether that's $500,000, $1 million. Like, dude, most people saying that they're striving for $1 million, they don't need $1 million to live the absolute dream lifestyle that they truly want. So I think you got to get really clear on that. Once you're clear on that number, I mean, obviously we can talk about the whole Grant Cardone 10X thing, right? Like, you probably should shoot for higher, because then if you even hit a certain percentage of it, you're way further than where you wanted to be. But once you're clear on the number, dude, I'm an engineering nerd at heart. Everything that we do with our clients is always going to be data driven, right? Men lie, women lie, numbers do not lie. So we have to have that data. And the question becomes, what's it going to take to get there? And this is such a big gap. I think everyone wants to talk about how sales is a numbers game, and you got to knock more doors, you got to make more phone calls, you got to send more messages in order to close more deals. And that's super cute advice, but it's missing a ton of context. And what people really mean is we got to knock more doors with the same energy and the same performance. We got to make more calls with the same energy and the same performance. And if all else is equal, then we will increase our sales volume. But the problem becomes, if we just look at top and bottom of funnel, well, we're going to have to go pure volume, which is a dangerous game when you're trying to just keep the same energy and the same performance, right? If we're tracking all of our metrics throughout the process, we know what everything looks like. We can start to work smart and hard, and we can definitely dive more into the data piece. But ultimately, it's going to give us a really good idea of what it's actually going to take where we want to go. Then we embrace a non-negotiable mindset. We set mandatory minimums for what needs to be done. Not that it would be cool if I got there by the end of the day. It's like, if it's not done, the day's not over. And I really want to underline that, because the words non-negotiable have become buzzwords over the years, right? It's really frustrating, because it's one of the most common words we use in not just our brand, but in all of our companies and what we do with our clients. Most people say non-negotiable and then they freaking negotiate every day, right? We need to really embrace that, where if those minimums are not hit, the day is not over. And when we do that, success becomes inevitable. We track that data along the process. We see where our bottlenecks are. We continue to open up those bottlenecks, find new ones, and eventually we blow our targets out of the water. So that's really what it comes down to. Super clear on what we actually want and having that directly aligned to the life we want to create, and then reverse engineering what the volume is going to need to look like. In order to understand what the volume needs to look like, we need to have historical data. So we have to track that data. But once we do that, then we can project what the volume needs to look like. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. And once you got that, and like you said, working it backwards, reverse engineering it, then you got to hold the team accountable on that non-negotiable topic. And I love that, accountability is huge here within our brand. And I think it's a key point to have as far as like your guys' culture and anybody's culture who's looking to be successful, is to have those core values, not let those be negotiable, because at that point they're not core values, and then holding everybody team to be aligned and accountable with those values and those metrics, just to make sure everybody's working towards the same common goal, not just as a team, but in personal development for themselves as individual reps as well. I think that's huge. And I could respect that, and we run things a lot similar here in our brand as well. In terms of mindset, how have you cultivated a money concise attitude that contributes to the financial success of your platform and your brand, Mike?
That's an interesting question. And I think, ultimately, in my opinion, the best way is to completely get away from the money. And that's really challenging, because let's be real, everyone gets into sales because they're trying to solve a big financial problem, usually, right? We got screwed over in our other gig, like whatever it is, there's a big financial hole. We're trying to pay off a debt, student debt, whatever it is. A business venture went south, like something needs to change. So we get into sales, and that becomes really challenging because we always hear like we need to abstract and like detach from the outcome, right? Well, why do we need to detach from the outcome? Really what's happening is that energetically we're operating out of scarcity, right? We have a stranglehold on that deal because we need it to close because our pipeline's too skinny, the commissions are too important, and all of a sudden the prospect feels that. And we could say the right thing at the right time with the right person and the right facial expressions and the right tonality, and all the things can be right. But dude, if that scarcity exists, that deal has a very high likelihood of not closing, and we might have no idea why. So why do I bring that up when we're talking about money? Well, because I think the biggest thing that drives that scarcity, the biggest thing that shifts our energy in a way that we don't want is the attachment to the dollar signs, right? And we can shift entirely to that place of service, which, by the way, like, it takes a little bit to get there. We got to beef up the pipeline. We got to make it so that a no doesn't hurt so much. We have to be impeccable with our word and be truly non-negotiable so that we know that the next deal is behind the next door. And if Susie says no, it doesn't freaking matter because her neighbor Bill is going to say yes. Like, these things matter. And once we can get there, I think we actually remove ourselves from the money thoughts whatsoever. Like, my most successful clients this season, without fail, the one thing that is completely consistent is that a lot of them, dude, they have no idea how much money they're making. They just know that money doesn't matter. And it allows them to just show up and do what they need to do every single day. So I'm not saying we should never think about it, but I think the more that we can get to that place, the less it will impact our energy in a way that we don't want. Because when it comes to sales, like, sales is a transfer of emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. If the energy's off, it's really going to take a beating on our sales volume. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question, but I actually try and remove the two a whole lot more.
I love it. Yeah. And, I agree as well. I tell my guys, we're not a sales team. We're a customer service team that happens to offer roofing and solar to help our clients. But I tell them all the time, when we focus on the money, the customer can feel that pressure, and it kind of puts them in a reclusive or a withdrawn position, and that prevents that deal from going or closing. So I always tell the guys, body language, your guys' momentum and how you guys go is always going to be related, felt by the customer. So we always want to make sure we're there to add knowledge and value. And I even tell my customers and teach my guys, we want to tell our customers, hey, whether you go with this or not, we're here to educate you so you can make the best decision for your guys' family and make the best purchase possible without being pressured. Whether you guys choose to go with us or not, we'll be here to answer all of your questions. And when you kind of position it like that, it shows your client base that you're here for so much more than just that paycheck. You're actually here for them. You care to hear about what their problems are so that you can diagnose those and address them correctly versus providing a solution before you identify the problem. I think that's key, Mike, and I can definitely respect that as well. How do you balance the pursuit of higher earnings with personal well-being, and what role does this balance play in achieving the next level of this goal?
Dude, I think this question's everything, at least in the high performance realm, because, dude, everybody thinks high performance is just like, oh, most successful, most deals, most money, right? Building some stack of cash. But we all know that person in our personal lives that's, maybe at the peak of financial success in our eyes, but behind closed doors, their relationships are falling apart or their health is deteriorating. That's not high performance. That's not what we do. That's not what we're about. And yes, our clients always come to us because they want to make more money, and that's fine. And we do that, and we have guarantees in place to make sure that they do that. But dude, the reality is that's not what's going to change their world. And I tell them this when they're enrolling. I'm like, bro, like, an extra zero in the bank account, assuming it ain't the only number, right? An extra zero, it ain't going to change. Like, you're going to feel a weight lifted. You're going to be able to breathe a little bit easier. But dude, that's not going to shift your world, not truly transformationally in a breakthrough type of way. What will change your world is making date night with your spouse non-negotiable. right? What will change your world is uninterrupted time with your family. What will change your world is getting back in the gym and starting to eat a little bit better and making these things non-negotiable. High performance is about building a well-oiled machine that's just firing on all cylinders, not just on the business front. And we know so many people in the business world that are just crushing it, but their personal lives are in shambles. So that ain't high performance. That's not what we're about. And I think the easiest way to really tackle this, at least at the start, is 100% is, again, I keep coming back to this non-negotiable mindset. It is building true non-negotiables. If you're in a committed relationship or you're married, like, dude, date night needs to be non-negotiable. No excuses. Like, I got young kids. I got a busy business. I don't want to hear it. Like, make it non-negotiable. If like the health and fitness is not a big priority for you, like, dude, it needs to be. So we build non-negotiables around these things. We start to get the ball rolling in those worlds. And like, that's the biggest ROI for everybody. It has to be. And then it just becomes a time management conversation. It becomes a scheduling and a prioritization conversation. And dude, those conversations are way easier, but we have to adopt that non-negotiable mindset. And that applies to life and business. And we track all of it. I talked about data earlier. Dude, it ain't just about like the door volume. It ain't about your conversions. Like, we track everything on the life and the business side of things. And dude, date night, workouts, they're no different. Minutes meditated, it's all the same. They have to be non-negotiable.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it's all about that personal development. And, I always tell people got time for what they want to have time for, right? Even when we hit the doors, they say they're busy, but if we say something that sparks their interest, they're going to make time to listen to that pitch. And the same thing for us, I tell my guys, you guys got to put date night on the calendar. And I didn't invent that. I mean, I heard that from another influencer in the industry, what he said, if you don't schedule it on your calendar, it'll continue just getting shuffled and pushed out of the way. So you got to make your wife a priority. For all the guys out there listening, man, happy wife, happy life. If you haven't learned that yet, then you're behind the curve. But you definitely want to keep your family life, your physical, health is wealth as well. So you got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and especially as leaders and as men. I mean, we're trained right out of the gate, that mantra that we've heard, we're supposed to just put our heads down and get it done. But, we definitely got to take care of ourselves, our physical health, our mental health, our work-life balance with our family, with our children. Because at the end of the day, what is our why? Why are we out here doing this, right? One of my biggest whys is my family. I'm out here, building a legacy for my family to carry on, for my kids to be proud of. I tell my guys all the time that we're not a sales organization. We're a customer service organization that happens to offer roofing and solar solutions to our clients. And when you do that, you're not selling anything, but you're more providing the knowledge for the client to make a great decision that's going to best benefit them, their household, their family. So I think that that's something great to touch base on, not to focus on the money. When you're out there doing the right thing, law of attraction kicks in. You're doing the right thing, and the money's going to come along with that, as you had mentioned. So I think that's great, Mike. I definitely see your point of view on that, and I agree 100%. In networking and relationships, how often does that impact the business growth? Mike, would you be able to share some experience where effective networking led into opportunities of income?
Yeah, dude, it's so interesting. I was literally having this conversation like 4 hours ago with a really close friend of mine, which in and of itself is a perfect example of this exact question, because him and I met like, the better part of a decade ago in the network marketing industry. We were like in completely different teams, never profited off of one another, but like just built really cool relationship and like a really cool friendship. Like the dude was at my wedding last year, and we've kept in touch ever since. And he asked me, we were talking about my podcast, the Results Engine podcast. We're like 285 episodes deep as of the day that we're recording this. And I've been running it since 2019. Actually, fun fact, I literally got the go live email from Apple as I was walking to the airport in 2019 on the way to San Diego, which was the event that I met my now good friend Mikey Lucas, who was our first solar client. And he became a client because I was giving a talk at that mastermind. So like, that's how long I've been doing the podcast. And my buddy Max, he texted me earlier and he was like, man, do you have any plans to monetize it? Like, how's the podcast going? Which I've never monetized our podcast directly. For me, it's always been a relationship play. And this is where this conversation becomes way bigger than just the podcast. But like, I've booked one call for my entire podcast and they freaking no-showed me, right? Like in the history of the entire thing, it's always been an opportunity for me to build amazing relationships and build relationship capital. It's the same exact reason that I spend so much money on masterminds, right? It's because I want to get in the room. And sometimes you got to pay that ticket in order to do so. And we got to talking and it's like, he asked me, do I have plans to do it? And I was like, honestly, dude, I don't really care because the relationships are everything. It's the most important thing. Like the value that I bring to the marketplace, let's say poof, like everything was gone, business closed. I need to go print an opportunity out of thin air. I have zero problem doing that. Zero. Because of the relationships that I've built, because of the skills that I've developed. The value that I bring to the marketplace is a combination of my network and my skills, which by the way, the skills and the experience also stemmed from the network because I got in the room with the right people, right? I can't stress it enough. That networking, it will probably benefit the exact opportunity that you're in right now, but you have no idea. It's like incalculable what it can do for you long-term. How many times do we hear all of these A-list celebrity level entrepreneurs that we love to look up to in this social media sphere? We hear them talking about, man, I met this person here and they introduced me to that person. And then that person connected me with this person. And then, they said, oh, you need to meet my friend over here. And then bam, $100 million company is created, right? Like we hear these stories all the time. I can't underline it enough. And like, dude, that's been wildly apparent in my journey over the last 6 to 12 months specifically. And I'm just grateful that I was willing to delay the gratification. I was willing to bet on myself and join the groups and pay the high ticket prices when it was wildly uncomfortable for me to do it because I was able to build these amazing relationships. It cannot be overstated how important it is.
I agree. I mean, I tell my guys all the time, your network is your net worth. And I think you touched on a very key fact that a lot of people in the industry or even today outside of the industry are missing. And I think that fact is that key phrase that you said, you got to get in the room with the right people. You got to put yourself up to be vulnerable and uncomfortable to be successful. And, everybody now is looking for that digital presence and thinking that they're growing their network digitally, but they've actually forgotten the basis of that, where it's out there getting face-to-face, shaking hands, kissing babies. Sure. That hand-to-hand networking is key. And, that's what people say. I have a buddy who, Donovan Morgan, and he owns Roofs by Dawn. And he posted one day, he said, don't shoot me a message on IG and tell me that you seen me at the conference. Come up to me and shake my hand. And I message him back and I'm like, hey man, where are you going to be? I'd love to come and shake your hand and collab. And, that's how we got our collaboration and he and I started working together. But it's your network is your net worth. And, being out there, making yourself uncomfortable, getting in the right room with all the right people, that's exactly what it is in growing that network. I love it. And, just like today, we're both working with Serge. He connected us together and we're making this awesome podcast discussing these things that are key value points for both of our business and our brand. So again, networking right here at its finest. I love it. And that kind of leads us into our next question. Networking is somewhat of a risk. So risk taking is often tied to financial gains. Can you provide insights into calculated risks that you've taken and maybe how some of those risks have contributed to your next level results or the growth of your brand and business?
Seems like every day of my life could apply to that. And I'm sure you can relate being a business owner and an entrepreneur.
Yes,
Honestly,
sir.
dude, the one that really sticks out the most for me is having left corporate. So for people who don't know me and my journey, like I've been in sales my entire life. Um, but in that process, I used corporate America to fund all my business ventures, right? So early on, like my childhood job was retail. I used that. I worked retail literally through college, through the beginning of my software engineering career, because that was unpaid. So I spent about a decade in retail. Then I moved into software because that was where I dumb lucked my way into a software engineering degree and went straight down to Wall Street. And I wrote code for a living for 7 years. And I took all of that money because this sounds so silly now in hindsight, right? But like I didn't know that commission sales was a thing back then. Like my retail time was all hourly, which is just absolutely crazy to think about. So I didn't know. Had I known, because I went into software because I'm like, man, I want to make a lot of money. And based on the schools I was getting recruited by for soccer, my guidance counselor moved me in that direction. I was like, do they make a lot of money? He said yes. And I went for it, right? And it's as close as you can get from a salaried like FU money perspective, outside of ownership or commission. So I went for it and I used all that money. I parked it into the personal development, et cetera, all the things we've already talked about, hiring the coaches, joining the masterminds, et cetera. But in that process, that's where I was building network marketing businesses. I spent about 5 years in that industry and then eventually built my coaching and consulting company. And everyone in my personal life knew that like it was just a means to an end. Like I wanted to leave. Not immediately, but definitely like I wanted to do something bigger because I looked again back to what I actually wanted, right? I looked at the life I wanted to create for myself, my future family. And at this point, I was like a 23-year-old kid, right? Living in Manhattan, just like kind of doing whatever I wanted. But I knew what I wanted. And I knew that my income, to quote Bob Berg and John David Mann from The Go-Giver, greatest book of all time, greatest sales book of all time too, in my opinion. But they said your income will always be directly proportional to the number of lives that you touch in a positive way. In other words, bigger problem, bigger paycheck. Solve a bigger problem that helps more people, you will make more money. And I looked at what I was doing. I'm like, man, there's no way. Like the likelihood that I get to the point where I solve a big enough problem that helps so many people that will make me the money I want, I got to leave. So that was ultimately the move. And after about 5.5 years at my last company, I think it was about 5.5 years, I finally took the leap after I went down to Fiji and jumped off a telephone pole. And like, that's a whole different conversation. But I remember I went home and I put my notice in 6 days after I got home. And the only reason for that is my sister and I had the same birthday, 4 years apart, which in and of itself is pretty insane. But my birthday was while I was away on this trip. I wanted to go home, celebrate with my family and kind of like involve my parents in the conversation and be like, dude, this is what I'm doing, not this is what I did. They wouldn't have changed my mind, but I wanted them to feel included. And I went home and dude, I'll never forget because I was making like healthy 6 figures of quote unquote guaranteed income, right? 5th and the 30th every single week, every single month, like fat deposits. And I was doing it, I was leaving it to go and bet on myself. And when I told my parents, like my mom looked like she saw a ghost, which is, as she knew it was coming, but she still was kind of startled by it. But by the end of that conversation, I made my case to her. And again, I would have done it anyway, but I made my case to her and she's like, you know what? You're right. Like now's the time for you to bet on you. And that was the biggest bet I've ever made, dude. I was walking away. I was defying what everyone else thought I should do. I was walking away from what I thought was a lot of money. And without that, like we've had months where our contracted revenue is close to my annual salary. Like I never would have been able to get to that point if I didn't bet on myself. And for many people, that bet is simply like going into a commission only gig and leaving the security, leaving the base plus comm, right? And just going all in. But that's what it was for me. Yeah. And if we didn't do that, like, bro, my life would be completely different. Now I left September 2018, so we're quite a ways removed, coming up on 5 years removed, and yeah, my life would be completely different.
I mean, I love it, man. I think risk is directly associated with the word entrepreneurship. That's what it is. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward, and then that goes back to faith too. In order to take that leap and take on that risk, you have to have that blind faith, right? To see that vision and see that canvas when it's blank and know what it's going to look like when it's complete, or have that vision at least to keep you going. But I mean, entrepreneurship in a whole is risk, right? We're taking ourselves out of that comfort zone, like you said, where we were making that 6-figure salary to go into the uncharted waters, and that takes faith and a lot of risk, right? We're taking whatever savings we had and pouring that into our vision of our dream to get that going. And it does feel great when you got the support of your loved ones, because it doesn't feel like you're in it alone. It feels like you got some type of support system and foundation, which ultimately is going to make it easier to have that faith and take on that risk when you're supported by your loved ones, and have that team and that foundational support, I think, is key. But, like you said, every day is a risk. I mean, every time we take on a job, we open a new market, whatever it is that we do, a new entrepreneurial endeavor, whatever it may be, we're always at a risk investing our funds without a certain ROI or promised sunset at the end of the tunnel there. So I think, entrepreneurship in whole is a risk, and, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. And that's what leads to that financial gain. And, some risks are calculated now that we've been in business a little bit longer. We are more data driven and calculate those risks a lot more. But, initially we were all learners at one point, and we had to figure out what that formula looked like to calculate the risk. So there was always that blind faith at the initial moment, I believe, at least in my journey anyways. But I totally agree with you. Every day we wake up and we're going to risk, risking a loss, risking a lawsuit, risking financial gain, all kinds of different risks. But the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward.
Dude,
definitely.
100%. One part I left out there was the calculation. And I don't want this to seem like I was like, screw it, and just like dove off a cliff without having any calculations on the side. I was down in Fiji. The reason I was down there was for Tony Robbins' Life and Wealth Mastery. And part of the life mastery was why we were jumping off a telephone pole. And part of the wealth mastery was realizing that there were a lot of blind spots for me in my money mindset and like the stories that I was telling, right? And I realized that I probably could afford to take the leap. And that's why I'd prolonged it. I never thought I'd stay as long as I did at that company. But what I did is I set a 2-hour time block for right when I got home from Fiji, which, by the way, was really freaking hard in my Google Calendar, because I was like, dude, going over all the way over to that part of the world, you travel so far back in time that you cross the date line and you like go forward in time. Like, dude, I legitimately like missed July 4th flying there. It messed with me mentally for the entire trip. But like figuring out how to calculate and like put it in the right time block was really hard. But the goal for that time block was get really clear on what my monthly nut was. How much money did I need to live every single month? And how much money did I actually have? And the reality was, I found out that I had like between 6 and 9 months worth of money. Like I could afford to take the leap. And the stories that I were telling were completely false. So that's an important part. I'm glad you mentioned the calculation part again, because I overlooked that, but it is a critical part. You need to be calculated in some capacity, but like you can't be overly calculated either. Like you need to get to like 80% and just be like, let's roll.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Just like, a lot of construction projects start from that way. They have a conceptual drawing and, they get that out to bid and that goes from there. But yeah, you got to have that calculation at least to have a clear target ahead of you.
100%.
I love it. Well, Mike, man, this has been an awesome podcast. I'm glad you and I were able to connect and exchange some value. I know you added some amazing value, and I got some great key takeaway points from this that I'm going to definitely implement and share with some of my leadership staff. And, hopefully I provided a little bit of value for you as well. And I'd love to stay connected after this, connect online and Who knows? Hopefully we'll be at that same conference and in the right room. Let me know where you're going. I'll be at IRE in 2024, Door to Door Con, and also RiffCon coming up too. So if you're going to be at any of those events, man, I'd love to connect with you in person 100%. And create some content and just hang out, man.
Let's do it, bro. Yeah, I'll definitely be at some of them. We're still working out the schedule right now, but I appreciate you having me, bro. This is a lot of fun. 100% connected.
Yeah, likewise.